Sujan, thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited to be talking to you about B2B content marketing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Something I'm really passionate about talking, so excited.
I don't believe you.
I love this stuff. I dream about this stuff.
All right, is that fine?
It's more like nightmares.
Sujan, excited to have you on the show. For anyone who doesn't know, you are the GM of Web Profits with offices in LA, Austin, and Australia, really respected agency. In addition, you're the founder of Ramp Ventures, which owns several SaaS companies. And specifically, for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know, you're actually my first real boss in SEO. I was lucky enough to have you as a mentor and now friend growing up, and that helped me a lot in the industry and in general. So I'm lucky to have had that experience with you. And yeah, I originally worked out of your apartment way back in the day. And yeah, obviously was a part of Single Grain, which was one of your first agencies. But in general, really respect you as a marketer, networker, and specifically today, going to talk about your great expertise in B2B and content marketing. So yeah, thanks for coming on. And specifically kind of to start things out, given you do so much B2B, I'm just curious to hear your opinion of how B2C compares to the day-to-day work in the B2B space.
So I think really B2B and B2C are very similar. I think the big difference is that on the B2B side, I think content or traffic is worth more, typically because a software, let's just say if you buy Salesforce, if you're doing content marketing for Salesforce versus an e-commerce site, each customer is worth way more, and you can value it at a larger, a larger lump sum, like an LTV essentially. But also, really, it's not that different at the end of the day. I think content marketing depends on the persona of the person you're targeting. So let's say you're targeting a consumer and they're trying to buy a swimsuit versus you're targeting a B2B sales professional who wants to buy a subscription. Very, very different way, or a subscription to Salesforce. Very, very different audience, right? So I think ultimately the big difference is in the audience and how you go about targeting that audience.
Yeah, I feel it might be, I don't know if you agree with this, that it's easier to attribute value of content marketing with B2B, like because you can get signups more directly. I feel like there's more branding in general with B2C content marketing in a lot of ways. Obviously, the links are easy to quantify value of, but with B2B is like, can you more often actually drive straight signups, or maybe it's ebook downloads. Yeah. There's like more conversion actions that very clearly have value. I don't know if you.
I
maybe
think so.
You can disagree.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's about right. I mean, again, it depends on the content you're writing. I've seen blogs and people do content marketing where the audience is not aligned with the customer base, which would be the same thing if you do on B2C as well. But if you do have good alignment, I think an email opt-in can be turned into a lead and generate revenue quicker, because if you have a sales team, you can go and enable it. That's all a list you can go and sell. So I think there's just more components to a B2B, but there is a downside, right? The longer sales cycle. So I might have done content marketing a year ago, positively affected them, and then they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this company. Oh, they wrote another blog post. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go sign up. And you don't, or like they just remembered, right? So I think like there's, grass is always green on the other side, right? Like it's when you're doing content marketing, it's always hard, right? Long time to value, and ultimately you have to contribute to the attribution. It takes a while to figure out, and it's not always it's so super clear.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing specifically in B2B that I do think is maybe more specific to that and harder to show value in B2C is the personal branding side. I think you've done a great job with that specifically. And just curious your point of view on that and how that contributes value and how people can use that for B2B.
Yeah, so I think building a personal brand was very, very much a deliberate thing I was doing to do marketing. And so for marketing for a SaaS business or something I was going to do. I didn't even have a business I was going to do it on. I just knew it was going to be the marketing, digital marketing, internet marketing kind of world. So I think a couple things that having a personal brand do is it helps you open doors and through relationships and whatnot. But I think it helps you also when you're doing, let's say, outbound content promotion or building links or doing co-marketing, any type of outreach you're doing, it makes the open rates better, easier, or like the friction points a lot less, because it's like, oh, I know this person, or there's like, simply put, like there's more credibility because my email signature might have like, oh, I've written this and that and the other thing, right? So I think there's just a lot more value a personal brand can do. I think in general for content marketing, but specifically on the B2B side, content marketing very much relies more on relationships. So maybe we might do a co-marketing thing because we're friends, not because of the fact that we have an audience would value each other, or like, you know what I mean? Like, so
that makes sense.
I'd rather lose one to a friend to get something later, and that's something I wouldn't really consider on the B2C side.
Okay.
Because like it's numbers and it's monthly numbers at the end of the day.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does that translate to clients? So obviously that works for potentially you and me. When you're thinking about new clients, I mean, I kind of think sometimes we do have more B2C clients. I think, as you mentioned, it's not that much different, but I think from B2B, it's sometimes I've brought up like, can we represent the CEO or get the CEO's voice or whoever their lead is? Do you do any of that work, or how's that translate in client work?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the client side, I think we always try to figure out, like, when we get into a client, when they start off, we figure out who's in the industry that's worth working with. Like, who are all the top players? Like, who are the leaders in the space? What are they doing? It's pretty much doing our due diligence or content research, doing an audit on our competitors, right? It might not always be competitors that are winning that audience. It might be some other folks. But when it comes to kind of what we do to get started, is putting a hit list together ultimately of who we want to target, like the companies and the people we want to get to be friends with, so that we can do guest posts, we can do co-marketing things. We've even done for clients like co-link building opportunities. So, you know, we've got competitors, let's say the client has people in the space targeting the same industry, but they're not competitors. They're going after us, they're doing link building and SEO, we're doing link building and SEO. If we buddy up and do it and help each other out, now we get double the links for half the effort, or half the effort to get the links. So there's a lot more things that can happen. I think that come from relationships. Obviously, it could also be applied for B2C, but what I found is on the B2C side, people are a lot less collaborative. Let's say for Mailshake, I'm doing content marketing for Mailshake. We've got a lot of people targeting salespeople or marketers. That's kind of the audience. I'll do things with maybe even my competitors or people targeting the same audience. We might do co-marketing together. We might do webinars. We might even do collaborative link building efforts where they do their link building and they help us out when they can, and vice versa. Because I think people a lot more. I found that people are just working together a lot more because they're not worried about competition, because it's the persona you're targeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even in B2C, we work with a lot of B2C clients and B2B as well, but generally it feels like if you're in a recipe space, it's like pulling teeth to get some recipe blogger to link it to anything. It's all about their own original content. I think it is kind of the form, like guides and stuff like that. More naturally, you got to cite someone else. You lean on those people to distribute your content more.
Absolutely. Like we have our competitors, like we've included competitors in our blog posts. We've had competitors write for our site, and that emails our list. That's like, so I mean, I think I'm a little crazy when it comes to that. Just the collaboration, I may be going more extreme than most people, but like, you know, yes, we're as a competitor of Mailshake, but it's a completely different mindset of the customer use case. So technically it's a different customer, even though we do the same thing.
Sort of, yeah.
So we've linked to them probably like hundreds of times. I don't know. My whole thing is reference them when you can, and they've shared our content dozens of times as well. So, you know, I think there's a mutually kind of beneficial relationships that you would never do. Well, if you're not insane or in the B2C world.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think you remind me of like Moz, who's amazingly like links out to other tools that are competitive with them. But I like your mindset that it's like similar tool, but maybe different use case. So it's not purely competitive. I mean, on the agency side, I mean, I link out to people like Seer. We have Seer on here. You're an agency. Obviously, we're an agency. But we're like have different client bases, so it's not. So, and obviously there's a ton of clients to go around. Fish in the sea as it goes.
It's the enemy you know is better than the one you don't, right?
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, it's not like we would ever be pegged on the same deal. And even if we were, like everyone has their own approach, and ultimately the client's going to choose whatever that fits them. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of competition. I'm not worried about the competition. We're all trying to get after this customer and serve them best. So it's like, how do you get them? Because that's really the hard part. Like, if there's no visitors, there's no customers. It doesn't matter if you have competition or not. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you talked about like collaborations and co-marketing and stuff like that, and a little bit on link building, but obviously links are really important. I think in some ways I believe that they're even more important in B2B. How do you think about link building? What's your like general approach to that out of the gate?
Yeah, so I actually don't think my background's in SEO, but these days I don't do a lot of SEO. Although I don't think I do a lot of SEO, but I do, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't really build links. I try to focus on getting brand mentions. So any citation of the brand, essentially. And that's like my North Star metric when it comes to content marketing. So every month, it's like how many mentions does our brand get? And we're at about, for Mailshake, we're at about 150, while on Norbert we're like at 20. And so they started really low, like Norbert started with 0. And that's how we base if we're doing all the right things. And I mean brand mentions like on
even
other,
unlinked.
Unlinked as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, well, first of all, unlinked is just email the person, ask for the link.
It's
like
one of our core strategies for big brands.
Yeah, it's super easy. It's just low-hanging fruit. It's found money, right? You put your jeans in the laundry and you're like, oh, I found $5. It's just like, it's super simple. So I think there's a lot of value there. But you know, links is a big, or brand mentions is a big part of our efforts on an ongoing basis. So that means it measures how many opportunities we generate with people, and not just generate, but how many opportunities we take action on. And then what are the results of our opportunities? Like if we did like, let's say in 1 month we did 5 new relationships with people, and we did, you know, publish 5 pieces of content, but that generated 150 versus 100 the previous month, that might mean we're doing the right things, and it might be more things we can do again and again and again. So I also look at email. So I look at links, brand mentions, and traffic from any of the things we do from our content marketing efforts, direct and indirect. So like direct being like the website drives this traffic, or we get SEO traffic. Indirect might be like we get randomly featured on this newsletter, and some spontaneous amount of traffic comes in. Okay. And it's just unplanned. Cool. And I think there's a lot more of that.
Nice. Do you do any benchmarking against competitors? Like, you had this per month, they had this per
month?
Yeah,
absolutely. I stalk the heck out of competitors. I'm watching everybody secretly, like just like a fly on the wall, I guess.
I mean, is there any like opportunity there, like competitive research?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's an example of something we just did this week. And we gained, I think, 5 links, maybe 6 now. I think somewhere between 5 and 6. I think 6 people said they would and 5 people did. So I look at, you know, this was for Vala and Norbert. We looked at our competitors, and we looked at, this is an old school tactic we were doing back when you and I worked together in 2009, 2010. Like, we look at if a company mentions 3 or more tools that are our competitors, they're more likely, super easily convinced to link to us.
It's link Moz. It's called link intersect on Moz. I'm sure other tools have that, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the technical term.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at brand mentions too. So I don't even care about links. I'm looking at brand mentions. Okay. Yeah. So what I do is I don't use like link intersection or tools like that. What I use is I look and just Google all the top tools related posts. Let's just say Yesware is a competitor. I will go look at Yesware. And I will also look at every single post that mentions Yesware, that mentions another tool. And I'll do this more manually because on the B2B side, it's so much about relationships. At least this is my perspective. If it's not a great link, or it might not be a link opportunity, but it might be a relationship opportunity. So there's always like multiple ways you can kind of an angle you can take with people. And sometimes, you know, a link opportunity turns into a webinar. Or a cross promotion where we email each other's list. Sometimes a webinar turns into 5 link opportunities. You kind of never really know. But my goal is to get in bed with as many of our. It sounds sleazy.
I get it.
Yeah, I want to be working with as many people that are targeting my audience and help each other build links, build our brand, promote our content, and whatnot.
Nice. So one really interesting thing you said there, and I thought of while you were saying that on like brand mentions and this different thing from the agency point of view, and just B2B in general, is just actually the deliverable. It's like you're doing a pitch to a client. Like I think of B2C, and a lot of times, I mean, we have a mix where sometimes it's a retainer, sometimes like 4 posts that we promote. I feel like what you're describing is very hard to have a more concrete deliverable.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong. I'm just curious how you
Absolutely.
think about that, selling clients and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like a deliverable is an input, right? And it's an output for a client, but it's still an input regardless. And so we can have one post versus one post, and we'd be signing a client out for 4, and we'll adjust the strategy with them. So, you know, there's always deliverables with clients. So like whatever, it's 1 post, 5 posts, doing X amount of leads. There's always something there. But I think I always tend to go on the results side, and then we'll adjust the deliverables on a monthly basis if needed. It's essentially a strategy adjustment. And I've seen, you know, less volume of content, just higher quality, or we might like turn 4 blog posts into something like an interactive guide or an ebook, or very rarely. Actually, I don't think I've ever done a white paper, but like people say it all the time along with ebooks.
They do, yeah.
And like as if we're in the 90s. But anyways, yeah. So I don't care about deliverables because ultimately the client is judging us, hiring, firing us, scaling with us, or with any agency for that matter, based off the outputs. Revenue first and foremost, traffic, conversions, all the other things that are very important. And ultimately, if you need to do 1 blog post or 4 or 15, you know, I talked to earlier today Bob Ralphio of Impact. He's another agency.
BND, I think.
BND, yeah. It stands for something.
World. Yeah,
branding and design.
Sure.
There you go. Impact,
Nice.
branding and design. And he does like 30 articles and has every one of his staff write content. And not all, they have like sub brands, they do all this stuff. Like their content strategy is complete volume. It reminds me of like the HubSpot strategy. And I would love to say and shit on all what he's doing, but he has 400,000 visitors a month to his blog.
400,000?
400,000, exactly.
Wow,
so
okay.
like I have, you know, with Vala and Norbert, we've got about 40,000 visitors, or 50,000 visitors to our site. And it came from like 4 or 5 blog posts.
Yeah.
So I have the exact opposite strategy working for me, and I would swear to it, but there's always another way to kind of do it.
Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts on this. There's always people, I forget what it's called, the 80-20 strategy. I don't believe that. Like you get 20% of your results from, or you get 80% of your results from 20% of your work.
Yeah, I totally believe. I'm like,
believe it.
I'm like 96.4. Like the 80-20 of the 80-20.
Okay.
I want the 20 of the 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're gonna write that book?
Yeah,
The
we'll
96.4?
see. We'll see.
I mean, I think if you're doing, maybe I have a biased point of view because we do so much search stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I believe all these assets can rank, and like, why can't it be more like 80% and 20%? There's just something that's struggling a little bit. But I mean, I guess it makes more sense, especially when you're doing the volume model. It's kind of like hard.
Well, I mean, here's why I believe it personally is that like I think I've either seen like things work really, really well or flop.
Okay.
I very rarely have success in the middle. And it might just because we're aiming for we're aiming for the clouds, and because you're going so aggressive, or you're going against maybe in a very competitive space, that you will lose and it will do nothing. But I mean, like it's like if you don't get the first page of Google, you don't really get much traffic.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm on page 2 for a lot of keywords, and that does matter, but that's like something I'll like elaborate on in the future as opportunities to go increase that over time.
Go back to it.
Yeah, go back to it.
That
But
makes sense.
in the 6 months or a year, I'm looking at the measurement of ROI. It's a flop. So I think there's always silver lining, but I consider that like a fail.
So you mentioned like, I feel like clients always want deliverables though. So it's like,
Yeah, absolutely. They're stupid. Clients don't know what they want.
No, I mean it makes sense. They don't want to just think, well, I'm going to pay all this money for this retainer and nothing will actually happen. Which I'm sure some agencies are horrible and actually do that and do the monthly report.
Yeah.
But do you see any pushback? Like you said earlier that content marketing, and I agree with you, is kind of like takes time.
Yeah.
So you do content marketing for 3 months. You don't necessarily have, I'm sure you're delivering things through that time, but in the sales process, how do you say, what's happening in these first 3 months? And
so there's 2 things we do. One, and this is like the biggest battle. You know, I think this is like client management versus what it takes to be successful in doing the role they hire you for in the first place. So what I try to do is vet the clients early on, and it's making sure in my first call with them, I make sure that they are okay with adjusting the strategy.
Okay.
And I say crazy stuff. I'm like, hey, and I give examples of that. Like, hey, one client, we started with this retainer, and then we'd move to this. And like, are you guys okay with that? And like, we very rarely do it, but like, I want to get their reaction. I try psychologically understand what they're thinking. See if they they're okay with it. If somebody freaks out, I'm like, oh, okay, that's glad we're not going to work with you guys anymore. But the second thing is like, I always have to remind the client, and we're very proactive with communication. We try to talk to our clients on a regular basis, and we've got the team working with them, not just me or an account manager or anything like that. And so there's always a lot of communication of what we're going to do and what we're thinking about.
Okay.
So I always tell them like what I'm thinking about doing next, even though that may shoot me in the foot, but just to prep them on the fact that things can change. Also, we kind of run off like 3-month, 90-day content calendars. So like that kind of our typical, like the most standard thing is like 2 blog posts a week, 2 blog posts a month, sorry. And so we'll have 6 ideas. But after doing 3 or 4 of them, we might find that like none of the other ideas will work because things have changed. Or things will double down. Or like, so we'll tell them like for a client, we did a series on like e-commerce. A client was targeting e-commerce companies, and it was like how to grow e-commerce from 0 to 1 million, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100, and then 100 to billion. The reality is like the 0 to 1 worked really, really well. The 1 to 10 was amazing. And then when we started actually writing the 10 to 100, it was really like the same crap as the other stuff. It's like do good customer support or customer service.
And maybe you learned, did you mention like was some in there a dud? And then you realized,
exactly. And so like when we launched it, we're like, let's just launch it anyways. And it just fell flat on its face. Because we were going to roll that up into an ebook later and do and video. We're just going to, I always plan for content expansion as well as like repurposing content from day one of the idea. And then we validate it, almost like a MVP of a marketing, MVP of a software company or something like that.
I think that's also an interesting like B2B. I feel like it's more B2B, maybe disagree with me, but that there is more repurposing in B2B. You could do an ebook, a deck.
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the difference. I'm trying to think of like what are B2C examples that have done repurposing. I think I've done a lot of repurposing on content. It works really, really well. Repurposing and expansion. So what I mean is like I'll take an old blog post. The URL is what I care about and the essence of that post, and I'll go make that into an ebook at some point, or like an ungated ebook, a guide or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of that can happen. So I'm always looking at like assets or potential things we can do, and those are things I like doing repurposing and I like doing content expansion because those are shorter term ROI. Like if there's already traffic on a post, the search traffic on a post, I can drastically improve the traffic just by adding more value to the post. Or maybe, some of the things I've seen on your guys' blog, the Siege Media blog, is like you're updating it, you're expanding it, you're adding images, you're adding video and all these things, or maybe repurposing the whole post with a video and then embedding it, and now you have 2 things. So I think of this as all great opportunities if you have traffic and assets that are working. Most B2B side, and this is really the hardest part of B2B, is B2B most of the time is very dull. Like I've done B2B for lasers. Lasers that clean pipes.
Fun.
You can't make that sexy. Not very easily at least. But also, chef apparel. And chef apparel would be, they sell to like McDonald's and CPK. So it's B2B, but it's chef apparel. So like, how do you make that like sexy? So I think the boring factor of B2B makes things very, very difficult. But it's countered by the high value or high revenue that you can generate. I was gonna have something else to say, but I completely spaced on it. It's just hard.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought I kind of like stuck on that. You said a little bit earlier was the idea of just like communicating ideas before you kind of do them.
Yeah.
It's interesting for us as an agency, we kind of like plan monthly calls.
Yeah.
And they were like, you should do this shift. but we are sending emails, but there's definitely something to kind of like a recurring conversation.
Yeah.
And moving towards things, you kind of like punch it home a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, the only reason we do this, I think this is kind of unconventional in terms of like most content marketing agencies or marketing or SEO agencies, because we're like a growth agency. We do help clients with multiple channels and also parts of the conversion, email nurture sequence, and so I'm looking at things as a whole marketing funnel, and one, that means like maybe a piece of content can be leveraged in the ebook or an email drip series or something like that, because I'm also looking at like, oh, we got all these leads, how do we nurture these guys? Or hey, this might be a good way to get people into, I have an awesome email nurture sequence that generates sales at the back end. How do I get more people into that? So I'm always thinking about multiple things. Also, because of this, the complexity of
B2B
working on, working with multiple, working on multiple channels. And like we're always checking in very frequently, so the client just knows more about us and them, because we have to get feedback on the landing pages, have them review our email copy, look at our ads, give feedback on performance of things. So there's just more check-ins, and that just allows us to do better content marketing, but also allows us to leverage content. This is a very important part of B2B, is that content's not always just for content marketing or SEO. It's also for other things on landing pages or other parts of the either like nurturing existing customers or educating them, nurturing your existing email list, and kind of other parts of the funnel that matter more, because again, like the buying cycle is pretty much longer.
Yeah.
Or it's more complex. Like when you buy a pair of jeans, and not to oversimplify e-commerce, but when you buy a pair of jeans online, like you think about it, maybe you've owned a pair, and you kind of take a day or two and you purchase,
Sometimes
or
less.
you never purchase, right? On the B2B side, if you're buying Salesforce and you're comparing against Marketo or whatever, like you're gonna probably spend like multiple meetings with people over the course of weeks to discuss this, right? And that's like just to discuss it internally.
Yeah.
It might be months before you even roll it out.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, all good points. Kind of like wrapping things up, would love to hear like on the B2B side, what's exciting you the most, or the best tool or the tip, just to give some people something actionable or useful, or what stands out to you in the market today.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to tools, first of all, I think you are the biggest tool, not you, Ron. Like
wow,
you
that's
you're the biggest tool I know. No, you are the tool, right? Like it's a craftsmanship. You know, we talked about this a little before we recorded. Like it's about the ideas, the strategies, and then it's about finding the tool that lets you help do the job the best way possible, right? It's your workflow, it's your idea. But in terms of what I'm excited about and tips and whatnot, I think content has become such a big part of the brand and how you stand out. Especially, I've learned this. We have at Rant Ventures, we have 6 companies, and each of these 6 companies probably have 50 to 100 competitors. Like they do almost the same thing. And so how do you stand out? How does Mailshake stand out against like competitor 53? And that's an actual number. We were 52 in the space.
Wow.
I benchmarked it, at least that I was aware of. But anyways, how do we stand out? And it's our brand. It's the content. Like people have signed up for us because they like me as a person. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But that's a part of what we do, right? So personal brand, content are all parts of the thing. So think about B2B content marketing as like a way for you to stand out as indirect ROI. And the other part of this is content is not always just content. It could be written content, it could be video, and video works so much better these days, even if it's the same thing, because people are just more adapting to that style of learning.
They're lazy and they just want to press play on a button.
Yeah, and it's a different learning style. But written content can be repurposed. And also it doesn't have to be written content, it can be a tool. I've done so many projects this past year that are not content marketing initiatives that are not content. Like we did this interactive guide on payroll taxes, and it was a little bit of content, a table of contents and little things like that, but it was a map, and it was like a tool, and it was a calculator that calculated the taxes you owe for whether you're
not writing. Really.
Yeah, it's just not written content.
Yeah,
so micro tools, free tools. Company CoSchedule does an amazing job at this. I forgot actually what they do, to be honest. There's some sort of scheduling.
It's maybe
tool.
not that amazing.
No, but they've got amazing tools. and I forgot it because I have a
It is
customer.
a content calendar software. We
Content
actually have a
calendar
client
stuff.
on it.
Yeah, there you go. But they've got like an email, like subject line analyzer, headline.
Yeah, they have a
analyzer.
great
They've
content marketing strategy.
all these
for
free
sure.
tools, and they do a ton of promotion around this stuff. So I think the best thing to do is go build free tools, or take parts of your tool that you have now and put it out to the, especially if you're a software company, put it out there for free. Put it out there for free, and use it as a lead gen tool.
Cool. Yeah, Sujan, I really appreciate you coming on to Content Conversation. I think it's valuable. Anyone who's thinking about a B2B business, it'll be useful. People watching at home, if you like the video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and really appreciate it if you give us your feedback and comments. Thanks. Thanks, Sujan. I appreciate you coming on.
Am I supposed to say anything?
Thanks, Sujan. I really appreciate you coming on. All right, thanks, Sujan. I really appreciate. Sujan just finds me a joke. Other guests don't laugh at me. Sujan, I really appreciate you coming on. Watch. I'm like sweating. Sujan, I really appreciate you coming on.
Damn, dude.
What am I gonna say? Watchers? No.
Earthlings.